Daniel stood at the door, gripping the small card Keanu Reeves had given him. His fingers trembled, but for the first time in years he felt something new, hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Outside, news spread like wildfire. Keanu Reeves had shown up at Reeves Plaza. Videos of him speaking to the protesters flooded social media. People all over the internet were talking about it. Hashtags like #Keanu for the people and #Reeves Plaza Revolution was everywhere. But inside the mall, things were different. The workers, janitors, cashiers, and store employees whispered to each other, unsure of what would happen next. Managers paced nervously. Security guards looked around, confused. No one had ever expected a Hollywood star to show up and take a stand. Daniel looked down at the card in his hand. It wasn't just a card, it was a chance. He took a deep breath, then turned to his coworkers. "Come with me," he said. The small group followed him. They were scared but determined. For years they had been overworked and underpaid. They had been treated unfairly. Today that might change. Together they walked toward the executive office. When they arrived, Keanu was already inside. He sat at the head of a long, shiny table. His face was serious, but his eyes were kind. In the corner of the room stood Margaret Harper, the mall's general manager. Her face was pale and her hands trembled. Keanu nodded toward the chairs. "Sit down," he said. His voice was calm but strong. The workers hesitated for a moment, then slowly took their seats. Keanu leaned forward. "Tell me everything," he said. "No fear. No filters. I want the truth." The workers looked at each other. Then one by one they spoke. Daniel talked about the 12-hour shifts with no breaks. Diane, a cashier, explained how her paycheck was always short but she was too scared to complain. A young worker named Ryan broke down in tears, telling everyone how his manager bullied him every day. As they spoke, Keanu's face darkened. He listened carefully, his hands folded in front of him. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush them. He simply listened. When the last worker finished speaking, Keanu stood up. "Thank you for your courage," he said. "What's happening here is unacceptable. And it ends today." Then he turned to Margaret. Margaret flinched under Keanu's gaze. "You've been running this mall like a dictatorship," he said coldly. "You're fired. Effective immediately." Margaret's mouth dropped open. "You can't do this," she shouted. "I've worked here for years." Keanu's expression didn't change. "And in those years, you've failed the people who matter most," he said. Then he turned to a man standing by the door, a lawyer from corporate. "Escort her out," Keanu said. Margaret's face turned red with anger, but she had no choice. The lawyer motioned for her to leave. She stomped out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The workers sat in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? Keanu turned back to them. "From now on, this mall will be run differently," he said. "You will get fair wages, reasonable hours, and a say in how things work. I'll be appointing a new manager, someone who understands what it's like to work on the ground." The workers erupted into cheers and applause. Some had tears in their eyes. But Keanu wasn't finished. "This isn't just about Reeves Plaza," he continued. "It's about setting an example. If we can change things here, we can change them everywhere." As the meeting ended, Daniel walked up to Keanu. His eyes were full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice shaking. "You didn't have to do this." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, I did," he said. "People like you are the backbone of this place. Never forget that." Outside, the crowd had gone home, but the energy in the air was electric. Workers and shoppers whispered excitedly about what had happened. Keanu, however, wasn't done. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me," he said. "Look into the other properties. If this is happening here, it's happening elsewhere too." As he hung up, a little boy approached him. He held a Reeves Plaza shopping bag. "Are you really Keanu Reeves?" the boy asked. His eyes were wide with wonder. Keanu crouched down to his level. "I am," he said with a smile. "My mom says you're a hero," the boy said. Keanu shook his head. "I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing," he said. "Heroes are people like your mom, people who keep going no matter how hard things get." The boy grinned. Keanu ruffled his hair and stood up. But deep down he knew this fight was far from over. A week later, Reeves Plaza was completely different. The workers were smiling. The mall felt alive again. Daniel was now the temporary manager. He was working hard to follow Keanu's plan. Fair pay, better hours, and an employee suggestion box were just the beginning. But Keanu knew this was only the first step. The news exploded with stories about Keanu. Some people called him a modern-day Robin Hood. Others accused him of doing it for attention. Keanu didn't care. He wasn't looking for fame. He was looking for justice. That night, Keanu got a call from Emily, an old friend and journalist. "Keanu," she said, "what you did was incredible. But you've made some powerful enemies. Be careful." Keanu smiled. "I've never been one to back down from a fight," he said. "What do you know?" Emily hesitated. "I've been digging into Lux Holdings, the company that owns Reeves Plaza. I think they're using their malls to launder money. If you're serious about making a change, this is where you need to start." Keanu's face hardened. "Send me everything you have," he said. The next morning, Keanu walked into Lux Holdings headquarters. The building was huge, made of glass and steel. He marched through the lobby. The receptionist gasped when she saw him. "Mr. Reeves, you can't just..." Keanu walked past her. "Watch me." He stormed into the office of Darius Crane, the CEO. Darius was a ruthless man. He wasn't happy to see Keanu. "What the hell are you doing here?" Darius snapped. Keanu threw a folder onto his desk. "You have two choices," he said. "Fix this mess or I expose everything." Darius opened the folder. His face turned pale. It was full of proof: money laundering, tax fraud, worker abuse. Darius slammed the folder shut. "You think you can just threaten me?" he sneered. "You're just a washed-up actor." Keanu leaned in, his voice steady. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with, and I'm not afraid of you." Darius glared at him. The room was silent. Finally, Darius spoke. "What do you want?" Keanu didn't blink. "Step down and start running your company the right way." Darius laughed, but it was a hollow laugh. Keanu turned and walked out. That night, he sat in his apartment, staring at a map of Lux Holdings properties. This fight wasn't over. It was just getting started. Keanu smiled. It was a rare moment of warmth breaking through his serious face. He typed a message back. "You already haven't." Then he put down his phone and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The next few days were wild. Keanu's confrontation with Darius Crane, the powerful owner of Lux Holdings, had caused a huge stir. People started whispering about corruption inside the company. At first, they were just rumors, but soon the news caught on. Headlines flooded every newspaper and news channel. Lux Holdings under scrutiny. Is Keanu Reeves the whistleblower? Scandal at Lux Holdings. What are they hiding? Darius was furious. He wasn't going to let his company be destroyed so easily. He called a big press conference, standing in front of dozens of reporters. His voice was calm, but Keanu could see right through him. "These claims are completely false," Darius said, looking straight at the cameras. "Lux Holdings has always been an honest and ethical company. This is nothing more than an attempt to ruin my reputation." Keanu watched the press conference from his apartment, his face unreadable. He had expected Darius to fight back, but he hadn't expected him to lie so boldly. Just as the broadcast ended, his phone rang. It was Emily. "Ku, we have a problem," she said, her voice tense. "Darius's people are digging into your past. They're looking for anything bad they can use against you." Keanu sighed. "Let them dig. I have nothing to hide." "It's not just you," Emily replied. "They're going after your friends too. Daniel, the employees at Reeves Plaza, even me. They're trying to scare us." Keanu clenched his jaw. They can try, but they won't win. The next morning, when Keanu arrived at Reeves Plaza, a large crowd was waiting outside. Reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing. Protesters held signs, some supporting Keanu, others defending Darius. The whole city was divided. Inside, Daniel was waiting for him. His face was pale. He held up his phone, his hands shaking. "They've been calling me," Daniel said. "Threatening me. They said if I don't stop helping you, they'll ruin my life." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone in this. We're in this together." Daniel nodded, but Keanu could still see the fear in his eyes. Keanu knew he had to act fast. He called a meeting with all the employees in the food court. As he stood before them, his voice was calm but firm. "I know some of you are scared," he said, "but we can't let fear control us. This is about more than just one company. It's about fighting for what's right." The employees listened carefully. Some looked nervous, but others nodded, looking determined. Then one by one they started speaking. They shared their own experiences, the unfair treatment, the threats, the dirty secrets of Lux Holdings. Keanu listened, his determination growing stronger with each story. When the meeting ended, he pulled Daniel aside. "I need you to trust me," Keanu said. "I'm taking this fight to the next level, but it's going to get dangerous. Are you with me?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'm with you." That night, Keanu met Emily at a small, dimly lit cafe. She slid a USB drive across the table toward him. "This has everything," she said. "Bank records, emails, proof that Lux Holdings has been stealing money, cheating workers, and breaking the law. But Keanu, if you use this, there's no going back. Darius will come after you harder than ever." Keanu took the drive, his face serious. "I know. But if I don't do this, who will?" The next morning, Keanu stood in front of dozens of cameras. Reporters from every major news outlet were there, waiting to hear what he had to say. Keanu took a deep breath. Then he spoke. "I'm here today to tell the truth." His voice was steady and strong. "Lux Holdings has been stealing from its workers, avoiding taxes, and hiding dirty money for years. And I have the proof." He held up the USB drive. The crowd gasped. Reporters started shouting questions. Keanu ignored them and continued. "This isn't just about one company," he said. "It's about a system that puts money above people. And it's time for that to change." As he walked away, he noticed something. A black SUV was parked across the street. Its tinted windows hid whoever was inside. But Keanu knew. Someone was watching him. The fallout from Keanu's press conference was immediate. Lux Holdings stock crashed. Government officials started investigating the company. Darius Crane, desperate and afraid, disappeared. But Keanu knew it wasn't over. A few days later, he received an anonymous message. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Come alone." Keanu had a feeling he knew who it was from. Ignoring Emily's warnings, he grabbed his coat and left. The warehouse was dark and empty. The air smelled dusty. Keanu stepped inside. His footsteps echoed. "I'm here," he called out. A shadow moved. Then Darius Crane stepped forward. He looked different. His fancy suit was now wrinkled and dirty. "You think you've won?" Darius hissed. "You have no idea what you've started." Keanu crossed his arms. "I know exactly what I started. And I'm not afraid of you." Darius laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh. "You should be. You've made enemies bigger than me. They won't stop until you're destroyed." Keanu stepped closer. "Then let them come. I'm not backing down." For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Darius reached into his coat. He pulled out a gun. Keanu didn't move. "Go ahead," he said. "But shooting me won't change anything. The truth is already out." Darius's hand shook as he pointed the gun. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Police cars surrounded the warehouse. Darius froze. Keanu took a step forward. "It's over, Darius. Put the gun down." Darius's hands trembled. Then slowly he dropped the gun. Police officers rushed in, handcuffing him. As they led him past Keanu, Darius turned to him, his eyes full of hatred. "This isn't over," he growled. Keanu just watched as they took him away. In the weeks that followed, Lux Holdings collapsed. Its assets were taken and its top executives were arrested. Keanu kept his promise. The employees of Reeves Plaza were taken care of. Fair wages, better working conditions, and a voice in how things were run. One evening, Daniel walked up to Keanu. "You did it," he said. "You changed everything." Keanu shook his head. "No, we did it." Daniel smiled. "I don't know how to thank you." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just keep fighting for what's right." That night, Keanu got a message from Emily. "You started something big. What's next?" Keanu stared at the message, then smiled. He typed back, "We keep going. One step at a time." And as the sun set over the city, Keanu knew this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.